off by acting as amateur psychologists. We are going to put Jacob's family on the proverbial couch. First, I need a reader for Genesis 37, 2 to 4. It's Plout, page 246, and the women's commentary on pages 211 to 212. Do I have a volunteer?
Genesis what?
37, 2 to 4.
37.
I'll read, Donna.
Lynn, did you raise your hand? I think I saw Lynn first. You'll be in the next one, okay, Mara?
Should I start?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
This is the family history of Jacob. When Joseph was 17 years old, he would tend the flock alongside his brothers. He was an attendant along with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph would bring malicious reports about them to their father. Yet Israel loved Joseph better than his other sons, for he was to him the son of his old age. He therefore made him a coat of many colors. When his brothers saw that he was the one their father loved more than any of his brothers, they hated him and could not bear to speak peaceably to him.
Thank you, Lynn. So, what is wrong with this picture? What does this tell us about Jacob's family? Marina?
There is jealousy between brothers. We saw a sibling rivalry before in the Torah, and here there are more siblings, so the rivalry is probably stronger.
Yeah, well, you were right. So where else in the Torah have we seen sibling rivalry? Where have we not seen sibling rivalry?
Yeah, right.
Maybe a better question. Cain and Abel, anybody? Ishmael, Isaac, it goes on every single generation. But here we get a really special taste of it. What else? What else is wrong with this picture?
Jacob played favorites.
Yes. Who's talking? I can't see where you are. Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Jonathan. Yes. Tell us more.
I mean, there's just a lot of these situations where really average people doing really average things or really fallible people doing really fallible things can be mined for great spiritual significance. So we can look at underlying metaphors of this and that and so forth. But there's just a lot of times where I personally don't really try to pretend that on the shot level or the obvious plain level that I don't really try to pretend everybody's being that heroic. We can sort of see metaphors for divine blessing and all of this sort of stuff in it. But right then and there, it looks like Jacob is not really, he's playing favorites. I mean, he's not really acting as the most enlightened person out there.
Yeah, his parenting skill leaves something to be desired, I think we could say. Why does Jacob love Joseph more than the other children?
I don't know.
According to this, it's because he was a late bloomer, so to speak. And Jacob was an old man when Joseph was born.
Okay.
Wasn't he Rachel's?
Yes. So he's the son of the favorite wife. The Torah says he is the child of Jacob's old age, but it kind of they've kind of forgotten about Benjamin, who is really the son of his old age. But oh well, we'll get back to him later.
But Benjamin hasn't been born yet.
Yeah, he's been born. He's been born and his mother has died.
Do we have any understanding of why we're told that Joseph was playing with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. Is there some significance to that?
I think there is. What do you think could be in there? Who are Bilhah and Zilpah for those of us who don't know?
So they're apparently the
concubines.
Jacob's other wives.
Right. They're kind of the lesser wives, right?
Right. So
Originally.
They're kind of the Hagars of this generation, I guess.
Thank you. Yes. Go ahead, Mara.
So it seems to me that we could suggest that Joseph's playing with them suggests, I'll say, a bad influence on Joseph, and that's why he behaves so poorly with his brothers.
Okay.
That an uncivilized influence.
Okay. Any other ideas?
Or could he possibly be taunting them?
He could be. Hold on. Let's everybody raise our hands, one person at a time. Larry, go ahead. I see your hand.
So I think it also reflects that Joseph is sort of shunned by his brothers who are the sons of Leah.
Interesting. That could certainly be. I saw other hands. Marina.
These are the concubines, the slaves were the mothers. So their sons are shepherds, and Joseph didn't play with them. He worked together with them, and he brought bad reports about them. So I don't know about the influence. I think he spied on them and brought negative reports about them.
Yeah, it's hard to say what their influence was on him, but what it does show symbolically is he's hanging out with the sort of lower esteemed group in this family. He's not with the number one children. He's with the children of the concubines of the slaves, right? So it just shows that he is, as you said, he's sort of isolated from his other brothers.
I also wanted to mention Rabbi David's joined us.
Oh, yes. Hello, Rabbi. How are you?
Hello, good morning.
Hi, Stanley.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I just want to point out one thing that I learned that was very interesting. Joseph looks like Rachel based on what the Torah says, because they use the same exact words to describe Joseph and Rachel. They are both called literally the same words: beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. And you see this in two spots, in Genesis 29 and then later in Genesis 39. So I think it underlines the fact that he reminds Jacob of his beloved wife who's now gone. And possibly the reason he doesn't care about Benjamin quite so much is he's the one, she died giving birth to him. So
Resentment.
So there you go. So, all right. So what do you all think about Jacob as a father? Sukasa?
Well, our patriarchs, they had family problems. They really, first of all, I was going to say that Joseph is a real brat.
Yes, thank you.
You know, he wants to, he's the kid that goes and tells, look what so-and-so did, And obviously Jacob encouraged it because he turned around and made him this gorgeous coat.
Right.
So,
let's put a bullseye on his back for the other brothers. Let's give him something special to wear. Right. So yeah, he's a little bit of
with the lots of colors.
Yeah. Jacob's a little oblivious to what's going on. And I would also point out that, as we'll see in the story, Jacob sends Joseph off all by himself to deal with his brothers. Is this a smart idea? Probably not. Also, he fails to protect his daughter Dinah, as we saw earlier in the Torah. So, yeah, he needs to go to some parenting classes, I think. Overall, that would be helpful for him. Okay, so here's the question. Jacob obviously loves Joseph the most, and we don't like that about him. But is it really possible to be completely impartial between your children? Is that conceivable? Can you love everyone equally? Rabbi?
I was waiting for another point. So I'm not going to try to answer your really important question because I'd say no.
Okay, well, shall we get back to you, or do you want to?
No, yes. I have a question. I've always wondered about the coat of many colors and who Joseph was. And I have periodically wondered whether Jacob was trying to feminize Joseph.
Well, that is a fascinating point, because the only other place in the Torah where we hear the same words describing the garment, it's called a katonet pasim, which we don't entirely know what pasim means. Could be striped, it could be many colored, it could mean adorned. The only other place we see that is when not in the Torah, excuse me, in the Bible, is David's virgin daughters wear this kind of garment. So it's obviously something that sets the wearer apart, but it's also known as a feminine garment. So yeah, what is that about? What do you think? Can't hear you. You're muted. Stanley, you're muted.
Oh, that's a terrible situation.
I know.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, great. The changing of Joseph into a woman, feminizing, first of all, is guaranteed to make his brothers want to kill him. That's absolutely guaranteed. And Rachel is where? Where is Rachel? She's dead, right? And what could happen if he took Joseph and made him a surrogate for Rachel?
It's kind of creepy, yeah.
Kind of creepy.
Just a little bit. Any thoughts about that, Brad?
Well, I've got a a totally different take on this, which is way out in left field. But
That's what we like the best. Go ahead.
Who do we see wearing these types of coats today? Magicians. And I'm wondering if he isn't conferring some magical properties on him, on Joseph, because right after receiving the coat is when he has these dreams. The coat comes before the dreams. And I'm wondering if there isn't a magical element going on here.
That's interesting, except these first dreams, does Joseph interpret them? Does he use any magical abilities to interpret them, or does he just report them?
Well, he reports them, but we have to assume that he knows what he's reporting.
Yeah, he's well, you all know the story. He says, he has these dreams that the sun and the moon and 11 stars, gee, 11, what 11 could that be? They're all bowing down to his star. And like that. So it's pretty clear that, I mean, even Jacob says, so what are you saying? Is your mother and I are going to bow down to you in the future? So yeah, but he doesn't say that specifically. He's more of Marina's sort of brat, he's like being like, yeah, here's the dream I had, aren't I special? Right? So does anybody have any other thoughts about this, or can we go back to my other question? Herman.
According to the remarks in my book, and I use a completely different one, it says here, such a tunic was a mark of high social standing, as is known from Assyrian inscriptions. Egyptian tomb paintings show Semitic men and women wearing multicolored tunics draped over one shoulder and reaching below the knee. So this was very, very common.
Okay, interesting. So you're saying it's not just a female garment.
Correct.
Okay, well, so much for that theory. But I still think it's worth thinking about, because why are they described in the exact same words, Rachel and Joseph? I don't think it's accidental. Jonathan, and then Howard.
I don't know if the female garment thing is necessarily a bad thing. I've read that the pasim, Ketovet pasim, is a long-sleeved garment that goes down to the palms, and because of that, a farmer has to have a short-sleeved garment. If he has a long-sleeved garment, it's going to get dirty and caught. So that a long-sleeved garment is a sign of refinery. That person's never going to have to get their hands dirty. And that would lend to both status and femininity, which, is sort of the same kind of thing. Like in the 18th century, men wore makeup and high heels and hose and things like that. So sophistication and femininity have a kind of a connection. But then I also thought it was kind of interesting that, the virgin daughters in the Song of Songs, the virgin bride of Solomon is often compared to God's love for the Jews, the chosen people, and so on and so forth. And also, then I was looking at it, I noticed when you talked about Joseph and Benjamin, but if Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel, his wife. So his brothers may have been concerned that he's going to get all the property if he has given him this coat, which is the sign of ultimate sophistication, but also his ultimate darling. And that even being the 11th son or 10th or 11th, the 11th son, he has a status as an heir, as firstborn. So on their part, they might have had some just practical, dad's going to give this guy all the stuff, So
that's a really interesting point. Howard and then Mara.
I just found out that Sefaria.org now includes the women's commentary text that Rabbi Ashkenazi edited. And the comment on this particular subject about the coat of many colors says, or long tunic. The book of Samuel uses the same expression for the garment worn by Tamar, daughter of King David, who tears it after her half-brother Amnon rapes her. It may have been an external marker of her status as a royal virgin daughter. That is, this garment functions as a symbol of its wearer's special status. Compare the role of a garment in Tamar and Madame Potiphar's stories below.
Okay, we'll get to her in a minute. Yeah, thank you. That's very, very good. Mara, what would you like to say?
Just that I use a different text as well, and in the commentary for mine, the statement's made that we now know from the painted tombs of the Bnei Hussein in Egypt that in the patriarchal age, Semitic chiefs wore coats of many colors as insignia of rulership.
Very good. Very interesting. And that's kind of like what Herman had to say. Okay, well, getting back to the thing that I think is sort of fascinating is it fair to even ask Jacob to love all his children equally? Is this possible? We say it is, right? I love you all the same. Is that really possible? Don't be shy. I'm not going to tell any of your kids. Larry.
Well, I tell my kids all the time. But it's not clear to me that it's possible to love people, anybody, the same or equal. But I don't think it's unreasonable to expect even-handed treatment. Well, no matter how much or different you love your family, it's that's something I'm not sure you can control, but you can control how you behave towards them.
Very good. Donna.
I exactly agree with what you just said about you can control how you react. Families in the Torah are like an example of my family. I swear to God. And I thank God for your examples and your teaching because it gives me insight on how to handle everything. It's a lot. And I appreciate that because separation from loved ones and then traveling and sibling rivalry and all those things and jealousy but my kids are not like that. They're good kids. But bottom line, thank you for the study.
Thank you. Mommy. Natalie.
Well, I agree 100% with what Larry said. But number one, we can never really explain why we love something. That is something that is not, you can say, I love you or I love someone, but we really don't know 100% why those feelings come within a human. And I think in part, it's what this other person does to you that you relate to that. So I think it's a two-part situation with love. And it's very complicated. So, but there is no doubt in my mind that you cannot possibly, with a really large family, feel the same about each person. However, you definitely have to be fair to each of these people in terms of other things that go on in life.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts about this?
If I may, and this may also be way out. If you go back to Jacob's youth, Jacob was a favorite son of the mother. I don't remember too much comment about Isaac, the relationship he had with Isaac, but he definitely had a phenomenal relationship with his mother.
Right. Isaac favors Esau,
right,
the twin brother, right?
Well, here, as far as Jacob's life is concerned, here starts the favoritism. And of course, he gets tricked into marrying the wrong woman. Why? Because Laban probably favored Leah as opposed to Rachel. I don't know that just
the older one.
My mind.
So she's got to get married first.
What I'm looking at is the fact that all through his life, Jacob came across people who favored other people.
Interesting. Very good point. Thank you. Brad, yes.
Yeah, I just had a question about the word ornamental. People have assumed that it's a coat of many colors. Is that a correct inference from the word ornamental?
We don't really know what the word pasim means. So you can infer all kinds of things based on what we know about this phrase. And one of the ideas is that it's striped, or one of the ideas that it's many colored or embellished or ornamental. The answer is we don't really know. So, but I think what's important is that it's setting him apart. He's obviously special in the family. Okay, so let's move on. I think I promised Mara to be the second reader. And let's look on.
You can break your promise.
I would never do that. You can trust me. Okay. So look at, let's all look at right, Genesis chapter 37, verses 12 to 14. And that's in Plout on page 247, and the Women's Commentary on page 212.
And as I said, I have a different translation.
So just then for you, look at Genesis 37, 12 to 14.
And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, Here I am. And he said to him, Go now, see whether it is well with thy brethren and well with the flock, and bring me back word. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody remember what happened in Shechem? Cindy.
The rape of Dinah.
Yeah. And what else happened after that, right after that?
Well, they circumcised all the men and then killed everybody and took over.
Yeah. So symbolically, Shechem is not a really good place. And yet Joseph is sending him off to Shechem. It turns out they're not really there, but symbolically, he's sending him in harm's way in more ways than one, right? He's sending him out to these brothers who can't stand him. Apparently, Jacob is not aware of that. So as Joseph goes out onto the site of disaster, we can only imagine that terrible things are going to happen. So let's read more about those. Who would like to read Genesis 37, 18 through 20? That's Slout on page 248, and the Women's Commentary, page 213.
I'll read.
Okay, go ahead.
They saw him from afar, and before he came close to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, Here comes that dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. And we can say a savage beast devoured him. We shall see what comes of his dreams. But when Reuben heard
Okay, stop. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, another reader. Tsukasa, did I see you? Go ahead. And maybe the next one, Howard. Okay, please read 21 through 24.
Okay. But when Reuben heard this, he saved him from their hands by saying, Let us not strike him a mortal blow. Reuben said to them, Do not shed blood. Throw him into this pit in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand against him, in order to deliver him from their hands to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his coat, the coat of many colors that he had on. Then they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Is it, you want finish? Keep going? No.
That's it. Howard, if you could continue with 29 through 35.
And Reuben came back to the pit, and look, Joseph was not in the pit. And he rent his garments, and he came back to his brothers, and he said, the boy is gone, and where can I turn? And they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a kid and dipped the tunic in the blood, and they sent the ornamented tunic and had it brought to their father. And they said, this we found. Recognize, pray, is it your son's tunic or not? And he recognized it, and he said, it is my son's tunic.
I think we're out of, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Let's back up. I'm sorry. Howard, back up and please read 25 through 28.
25.
I got that backwards. Sorry.
Sorry.
And then you can continue and repeat what you read before, okay?
25. And they sat down to eat bread, and they raised their eyes and saw, and look, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, their camels bearing gum and balm and laudanum on their way to take down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brothers, what gain is there if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and our hand will not be against him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers agreed. And Midianite merchantmen passed by and pulled Joseph up out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph to Egypt. And Reuben came back to the pit, and look, Joseph was not in the pit. And he rent his garments, and he came back to his brothers. And he said, the boy is gone, and where can I turn? And they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a kid and dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the ornamented tunic and had it brought to their father. And they said, this we found. Recognize, pray, is it your son's tunic or not? And he recognized it, and he said, it is my son's tunic.
Okay. Keep going until 35.
A vicious beast has devoured him. Joseph is torn to shreds. And Jacob rent his clothes and put sackcloth around his waist and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose to console him, and he refused to be consoled. And he said, rather I will go down to my son in Sheol mourning. And his father keened for him.
Okay. So let's back up to the beginning of this passage. So who says, let's not kill Joseph? Who volunteers to say, no, this is not a good idea?
Judah.
Judah. Who else?
Huh.
Who suggests it first?
Reuben.
Interesting. Okay. And who are the people that purchase Joseph?
Ishmaelites.
Ishmaelites, and who else?
I'll go in the other bedroom. I'll just sleep, honey.
Sorry?
If you're so tired.
Okay, everybody mute. If you're not talking, please mute.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Repeat what you were saying. We were saying, okay, so the Ishmaelites and who else?
Midianites.
In this passage, the Midianites. So what is it? Is it the Ishmaelites or is it the Midianites? Is it Reuben or is it Judah? What do you think's going on here?
probably two different texts.
Yeah. I think that most scholars would say there were two different versions of this story, and somehow they wove them together. The redactor wove them together to make this story. And it's just interesting that they leave the contradiction there. And I'm not sure why. I don't know, maybe Rabbi Davids has some idea as to why they left in these contradictions.
One response could be, oops. There are a vast number of passages that surprise us because they're not accurate, and we can see it. And how does that happen? And there's no answer, Donna. You have different editors, different redactors, as you say, and different copyists. And that's a big deal, the different copyists, people copying from one script to another. And, you just interrupted me. Was I writing Yehuda or Reuven? What was I writing? I'll put Reuven. Let's keep going. They're human. And I think that these are human inaccuracies without significance.
According to Richard Elliott Friedman, the text that says it was the Ishmaelites was the J text. And then there's one little verse 36 is one little verse that's thrown in the middle of this long J thing of a P thing. So J would be like the southern, ancient southern Judah, and P was the priestly text who favored Aaron.
Okay. Maureen, I see your hand up.
In my reading, Reuben wanted to save Joseph and return him to his father, and he wasn't even present when the sale occurred. He came back and found that he wasn't there. So he was one brother who said, let's not kill him. And Judah was another brother who said, what will we gain in killing him? Let's just sell him. So I don't see there was a confusion. I see it as two different approaches.
Interesting. Yeah, where does Reuben go? Why is he not there when they throw him in the pit? It's sort of interesting. He's got these intentions to save him, and yet apparently he leaves him long enough that they have time to not only throw him in the pit, but also sell him to the Ishmaelites / Midianites. So I think this is a great example of having good intentions, but not acting on them. Rebecca.
The brothers saw the Midianites and the Ishmaelites, and they stayed away from the pit, in my opinion, so not to be assumed to have done something wrong to their brother. Then the Midianites came by and saw Joseph in the pit. They lifted Joseph out of the pit, and then the Midianites sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites.
Okay.
Donna, may I say something?
Hold on, where are you? Okay, first Mara, then Donna.
So am I confused? In verse 22, Reuben says, shed no blood, cast him into the pit, but lay no hand on him.
Mm-hmm.
But in 26, Judah says, what profit is it if we slay him? So those are two very different approaches to
that's
why he shouldn't be killed.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. I'm still not sure why we confuse Midianites with Ishmaelites.
Because it's two different texts. Two totally different
Yeah,
stories.
no, I understand. I understand that. But of course, we try to interpret the Torah as if it was all meant to be there. There's no mistakes. So I'm just trying, well, let's just grapple with what could be possibly the explanation for that. Donna and then Rabbi.
Okay, yeah, I was just commenting on your question about why he left him there and went away. Maybe he could not bear the sight of seeing them do this to his brother. Maybe he could not bear it and he had to leave. He didn't want
Interesting.
to see it. That's possible.
Yeah, that is possible. Rabbi.
One of the things that I mentioned before, and we have to keep in mind, that we're dealing not just with a political entity, the family of Jacob, we're differing on relationships with God. The God who dealt with Jacob and his family is not the God who governs the other places mentioned in the text. It just isn't that way. So that selling Joseph to a Midianite is pulling him out of the covenant.
Interesting.
And
he's out of the jurisdiction.
It totally a different jurisdiction. And it actually, in some ways, more serious than killing. They are breaking his relationship with the God of Jacob.
Interesting. Howard.
Just to throw in some more confusion.
That's always good.
Yeah, the Hebrew in 37 doesn't say Midianites; it says Medanites.
Oh yeah.
20, what is it? What is it? 26? No,
it's 36 that says Medanites, but that's
20.
another thing where you had people coming in later and putting the vowels in. It might have actually been the same word. It was just copied differently. So
26 Midianites. And also, according to Friedman, again, 26 is the J text and 37 is the P text.
Very good. Well, okay, so oh, Brad, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back to your question, Donna, on how is there a logical explanation here of this Ishmaelites, Midianites? But the text tells us that they see the Ishmaelites and then they go into this discussion about what they should do. And it is possible that while they're discussing, the Ishmaelites move on, and then all of a sudden the Midianites come into the scene, and they decide, and then because now they've decided what to do, they sell them to the Midianites. So I mean, it it can make sense.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
that's exactly
that's good analysis. Larry. You're muted, Larry.
And verse 28 seems to be the most challenging in all, because after they have the discussion that Brad just pointed out, the text says, so Midianite traders passed by, and then they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites. So it's like the Midianite role seems to be assisting with the physical act of pulling Joseph out of the pit. But then you get down to, what is it, 36? And it's the Midianites who are selling him in Egypt. So it's just confusing as all.
Okay, so Joseph, where does he end up after whoever the Midianites or whoever they are? Midianites, the Ishmaelites, whoever bought him, where do they take him? Egypt. So yeah, so this is sort of the beginning of the slavery of the Jews. So it's foreshadowing what's going to happen to all of us. very shortly. After Joseph does his thing in Egypt, then we have a new Pharaoh who knows not Joseph, and we're going to have the whole story of slavery and the Exodus. So this whole story is a foreshadowing of that. Kevin.
Yeah, I just want to point out that there could be multiple trades that happened. One party could, be the first person to acquire, and then another party sell. So I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, so you were saying that he went from the Ishmaelites to the Midianites to the Egyptians. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, distinct possibility. Okay, so meanwhile, back at the pit, we've got we've got the brothers. And what do they do to explain all this to their father? Anybody? Okay, Howard.
I think this discussion really very clearly brings out the traditional way that the Bible used to be interpreted up until the time of the Enlightenment in Europe. That the assumption was, number one, it's all perfect, everything's correct, there are no mistakes, no typos, no mishmashes. Number two, it's cryptic, and you have to dig into it to find an explanation. So whoever's the best scholar is the one who can come up with the most creative solution.
Well, I think that there are a bunch of people in this group that have come up with pretty creative solutions.
That's what I'm saying. We're doing what we're doing, because Rashi's comment is exactly that. Says he was sold to these people, then they sold it to those people, and they sold it back to these people. That's the explanation. It must be the explanation, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
Ever since, let's say, the 16th century in Europe, we do things as we look for logic, and we look for facts, and we look for coherency. So it's and we understand that a document that's 25 centuries old probably has a lot of recopyings and mistakes and multiple authorships and people writing because they have an agenda. I mean, look what the Reform movement, how they've practically rewritten the whole Torah to explain how it means that we should have tikkun olam and all kinds of things that nobody ever even practically heard of.
Except for the Kabbalists, but whatever. Okay, so getting back to my other question, what do the brothers do to explain this to their father? Sukasa.
They lie.
Okay, how?
Well, because they didn't, they had to make up a story to not to justify, to excuse, to explain their actions, explain away their actions, and not take the blame for what they did. Oh, we didn't do anything. An animal killed him.
Animal killed him. So they bring back his
cloak and they dip it in an animal's
what?
blood, and that's what they do.
Okay, so interesting. Goat's blood. Now, one of the things about the Torah is it seems to me that what goes around comes around. So we've got Jacob deceiving his own father, Isaac, by putting goat skins on his face to make him seem hairy. And now we have Jacob himself being deceived with goat's blood on this torn garment. So there's a little bit of poetic justice in a way there. So if you remember from a few minutes ago, oh, I'm sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Well, the brothers don't lie. It's Jacob that makes up this story in his head about the beasts. He's the one that...
You're right. If you read it carefully, he jumps to that conclusion, right?
Yeah.
They don't say that. They just show him the supposed evidence, and he draws his own conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a good point. So where were we? Okay, so we see at the end of verse 35 that Jacob refuses to be consoled. What do we make of that? Is that fair of him to never recover from this loss? What does it say to the other children? Thoughts? I see you nodding, Sukasa. Oh, okay, Marina, you raised your hand.
I think he's being dramatic because we know he lived a long life after that, and he did not die of grief. He's obviously grieving his son, but he continues living and maybe enjoying life.
Well, yes, and I would add that the other children must be looking at this and saying, gosh, if his whole life is over because he lost this one child, what are the rest of us? Are we chopped liver?
But also it was his fault in a way that he sent Joseph alone out there. Yeah. So he's grieving, but he was reckless in commissioning this endeavor.
Yeah, so perhaps he's guilty in addition. He feels guilty about what happened. Mara.
Just a question. I read this and I think of, say, the hostages, and I have to ask, what do the rabbis say about grieving if you don't have a body?
I don't know what the rabbis would say. I think that our law would say after about 7 years you're declared legally dead. But I don't know if you're supposed to mourn for all of that time. Rabbi Davids, do you?
Well, you're totally correct, Donna, and it's an interesting point. There is a statute of limitations. If 7 years, okay, you can mourn, you can remarry, which is a much more important factor. And the people in those days suffered great losses. Life did not go on without problems. There were wars, there were raids, there were this, there were that. They couldn't cripple themselves by saying that, we're not going to do anything till we find the body. If that's going to be the case, there'll be a lot of people doing nothing. I want to just throw in one point, Donna, and thank you for today. Remember what the purpose of the last 10 chapters of Genesis is. The purpose is to get the Jews into Egypt. It's not incidental that Joseph finally becomes the reason for going to Egypt, but that's all a prelude to what is really the beginning of the Jewish story, which is the beginning of the book of Exodus. So if the authors were running a little bit and maybe weren't as neat as they could be, they had a goal: get those people into Egypt, because only when they're slaves can they be free.
Absolutely. But I think in the meantime, we have a very, very rich and interesting story all by itself. I mean, yes, we could go on for hours picking apart these different paragraphs, and we haven't even gotten to half of the outline I have. Unfortunately, we are almost out of time, so I'm going to be doing the Kaddish now. Thank you all for a great discussion. And so we remember those who have passed away during the past month. Milford Elliott, Saul Galper, Sandra Gelfand, Stanley Greenberg, Roland Kazanjian, Shala Leah Kohansame, Barbara Levin, Alexander Morris, Giti Savis, and Phil Weiss. And the yard site that occurred at the same time this year, in the past, Don Adlin, Isaac Alex, Hushang Amini, Alvin Barbanel, Miriam Barron, Constantine Baruch, Howard Bass, Jerry Bendit, Sandra Black, Seal Bloom, Lena Berg, Emmanuel Burton, Mark Craig Kane, Barry Chasen, Dora Cohen, Gussie Dancer, Penrose Desser, Sherry DeVries, Lillian Dishler, Rivella Dunner, Zal Dworsky, Roger Ensign, Jeffrey Feldman, Francis Fenton, Harold Florence, Rudolph Fox, David Friedman, Stuart Friedman, Richard Friend, Arthur Harold Gardner, Samuel Gartzman, Ann Gilberg, Dave Golad, Abraham Goldsberg, Richard Goldman, Julie Goldsmith, Henrietta Gorlick, William Gray, Joel Greenberg, Egon Halbright, Helene Hansen, Lawrence Jeffrey Heineman, William Heller, Darrell Hirsch, Sheppy Hockenberg, Benjamin Hallam, Gordon Allen Holtzmark, Louis Hyman, Marshall Jacobson, Ruth Jameson Fine, Madeline Carnes, Philip Kent, Max Cole, Lenore Kramer, Burton Kurtzman, Marilyn Langzam, Annabelle Leon, Myron Lester, Charles Levison, Max Levine, Leonard Levinson, Melvin Lynch, Oscar Lozubnik, Naomi Malin, Edgar Marks, Nathan Marin, Asher Mishkanian, Stanley Meyer, Sylvia Morgans, Jeanette Pastor, Dorothy Plager, Herbert Polsky, Boris Ratner, Philip Rouse, Edna Rice, Dessa Ross, Reese Roston, Irving Rubenstein, Ronald Saul, Irving Sidney Shulman, Harry Siegel, Martin Seeler, Leonard Schaefer, David Stewart Scher, Reva Silverstein, Robert Slangerup, Rose Steinberg Frankel, Jake Stock, Stanley Stogel, Marilyn Sussman, Jacqueline Tenzer, Susan Turk, Mindell Wallach, Benjamin Barry Ward, Sam Weissman, Sylvia Whites, Daniel Weeder, Sheila Bordeaux, Lean, David Wolf, Bessie Woolner, Murray Zachary, and Joel Zucker. And any additional names that we hold in our heart, and all of the people who've lost their life in the defense of the United States of America and of the state of Israel. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, hagala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach v'alam al nei almaya, yitbarach v'yitbarach, yitbarach v'yitnaseh, Dar v'yitalev v'yitalal, Shmei dekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiram v'yalma v'imru amen.
Tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yalma v'yimru, amen. Shlomo Rava in Shemaiah,
v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'molo. Uyaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol
All
Yisrael.
Yisrael, Amen. Amen.
Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Bye, shalom. Thank
Shabbat
you. We
shalom,
love you.
Donna.
Love your hats, Susie. See you-
Thank you,
see you
Donna, for
Sunday.
today.
Thank you, Donna. God bless everybody. Happy Hanukkah.